is my stash of Christmas craft supplies. And this is the box they're supposed to fit into. I was about to start using up my stash when I realized just how many ugly Christmas pattern papers I have. I know ugly Christmas sweaters are a thing, but are ugly Christmas papers a thing too? That's when I decided it was time for a stash busting challenge. I have 12 days to use these forgotten supplies to make as many Christmas projects as possible. Here are the rules. Rule number 1. Each project must include at least one ugly Christmas pattern paper. Rule number 2. No new items allowed. I can only use what's currently in my stash. Rule number 3. Projects need to be completed in an hour or less and be easy to make so you can make them for your family and friends. Today's project is perfect if you're short on time. What's even better is that it will use up a bunch of paper scraps and embellishments. Of course, we also need to add in as many ugly pattern papers as possible. It's time to get started.
Today I'll be creating with Crepe Paper's Hey Santa collection, and I've pulled out a bunch of my paper scraps. We are going to get die cutting in a moment here. Because it's day one, I wanted to get some quick wins and I wanted to create some projects that come together really quickly. I'm going to start by batch cutting a bunch of tags out. I've got 2 sizes that I'm working with here, and then I also have a couple of bow dies. They create 3D bows and they're really good for using up with paper scraps. So I'm going to cut out a bunch of those as well. I'll do my best to link all of the supplies in the description box below, but I do encourage you to use what you have. I'm working here with a collection that I've already used quite a lot. You'll want to choose a line that you've used and made several projects with before, and one that has paper scraps left over that aren't super small. The large tag that I'm working with here is a little over 6 inches long. Here's a look at the first ugly pattern paper I'll be using, and I know this one isn't actually that ugly. It's more that it is hard to use for me because it's got snowflakes on it. It does not snow here at all where I live in Australia, so snowflake icons are quite tricky for me. The main thing I was looking here for these pattern papers were ones that would fit my tag size. Oh yes, this one. This one is actually one of my least favorite papers. I better make sure to include some of that. Now, I also wanted to mention that I'll be using words like ugly, bold, hard to use and forgotten for these kind of pattern papers. I'm talking about the papers that are in my stash that I have been neglecting or avoiding for some reason. My big goal at the end of this series is to be left with a stash that I really love, that I find easy to use. It would be so much more fun if you joined me on the challenge. Be sure to check the description box below for a link to the Facebook group. So I have cut out a bunch of tags. It's now time to cut out the bows, and I am batching all of the steps in this. I'm going to create maybe 9 tags here, and it is so much faster to do each step as a batch rather than completing an entire tag all in one go. I'm all about them bows, so it's time to create a bit of an assembly line and get these all made up. The 2 different dies come in 2 different style of bow. The first one has 2 separate pieces and the second has 3 separate pieces. They are very easy to put together, and this is actually a really fun job to do while you're watching a Christmas movie. Do you watch movies while you create? I tend not to because I get a little bit distracted. I find that I can't do both of those things at once, but I know a lot of creatives who do. So let me know what you like to watch in the comments below. And here they all are. Aren't they cute? And here are my tags, so everything is now prepped. This is where the fun begins because now I can pull out all of my bits and pieces of ephemera and my smaller paper scraps to create some beautiful layers on the tags. I'm going to start with my very least favorite pattern paper, and there was a reason that I made sure to cut a tag from this one. If you're doing this with your stash, you will want to make sure to put your ugliest papers down first. use the ugliest ones to cut your tags with. As you create the card, you're going to be placing all of these other pretty supplies on top, so you actually don't end up seeing a lot of what is on the tag base. I'm going to use my cluster cake method to create these, and if you're not sure what that is, essentially I'm imagining the tag as if it were a beautiful big wedding cake. The bottom of the tag is the bottom layer of the cake and therefore is the largest, and then I'll work through medium supplies and smaller supplies, and those will be on top. I have made a full step-by-step tutorial for this process. I'll be sure to leave a link to that video in the description box below. Each of the tags is going to get its own bow, and you'll see here that they all sort of fit in a similar format. I really don't see the point in reinventing the wheel here. I am not trying to come up with a brand new design for every single tag. All I'm doing is digging through my stash, looking for pieces that would fit within the layers and then layering them up on top of each other. I also did find a small scrap of vintage sewing paper, so I am going to use that in my layers to create some texture, and you will see towards the end of the video that I do pop these into my sewing machine. So it might seem like I have finished that one card. I have not. I will get back to that here in a moment. I am going to get pretty much all of them up to that same level, so they're going to be about 80% done. I actually find it really lovely to create like this, to create in batches and then have that bit of breathing space in between each project to sort of come back and have a look at things with fresh eyes. I want to use up a stack of these embellishments, so I am being very generous in my layering, but I do want to be careful not to overdo it. I'm also being mindful about the spread of colors and the icons that I'm using across the tags. I don't want to get to tag number 9 and be left with a bunch of like red things or a bunch of elements that are giant. I do want to try and really mix and match my icons here. I am going for a very eclectic look here, which is why I also added in that vintage paper. It's the kind that you get in like the sewing patterns. You know, I don't even think they make them like that anymore, but you can get them in vintage stores. So it's like a packet of sewing patterns, and the paper it's almost like tissue paper. So here is tag number 2, very similar design, but it looks very, very different. Really just a bunch of layered paper scraps and then anchoring it towards one side of the tag. Of course, I need to add a bow to the top, and I am securing everything with a liquid adhesive. These are going to be placed on gifts, and I don't want to lose any of the bits and pieces if I'm traveling with them. I also have this book of sentiment stickers, and they are going to be perfect for this project. I actually don't buy these anymore, especially as a scrapbook supply. They are perfectly fine for cards and projects like this, but on my scrapbook pages, I have turned into a little bit of a sticker snob. Are you the same? I prefer to work with stickers in my scrapbook layouts that are a bit thicker, that have a little bit more substance to them. The ones too that work really well if you mount them up on 3D foam. Let me know in the comments below. Surely I'm not alone. Surely I'm not the only one who's a little bit obsessed with the quality of their paper craft supplies. Oh yes, I almost forgot to mention, if you're one of the lovely creatives who's been following along with my clustering series and you're looking for something to practice your clusters on, this is the project for you. You could treat each one of these tags as an embellishment cluster. It would be a great way to practice building embellishment clusters, and you're spreading a little Christmas cheer. So this is tag number 3, and I am going to weight it here on the right hand side, and I do like to have a few little overlapping elements. You will have seen on the previous tags that I do extend the pieces of paper and the banners and things over the edge of the tag. There's a reason for that. It's going to sound strange, but I don't want the tag to end up looking too rectangular. Now, I know it is a rectangle tag, so of course it will look rectangular, but I want the outside line of the tag to be interesting. And the way to achieve that is to extend little bits and pieces of the ephemera out over the edge. The funny thing is, it actually doesn't even need to be too far over the edge. I'm talking 1/4 inch maximum. All you want to do is break the line of the rectangle of the tag. So if you think your tags look too rectangular, too solid on the left and right hand sides, scooch your embellishments out over the edge ever so slightly. I promise they will look so much better. I do have a couple of smaller tags that I've made. I think there was 2 in this smaller size. Same rule applies, except obviously you've got a lot less space to work with. So you do need to keep things a little bit simpler. So it was about at this point that I realized that I didn't have a lot of texture on the tags. I had used up all of that really pretty sewing paper, but I did have this paper doily, so I'm going to add that in. And that did sort of start a thought process in my mind to add some things that are a little bit more textured. I am going to have a look in my stash in a moment here for some maybe ribbon or fabric that I can also add into the tags. I would say that the style of this collection is a little bit whimsical and then sort of like vintage eclectic. It does give me Maggie Holmes vibes actually, but it is just a regular crate paper collection. If you're playing along at home, I recommend you choose a collection that is quite similar. To make this as easy as possible for you, you'll want a collection where all of the different pattern papers work with each other really easily. You don't want to have to think too hard about things coordinating with each other. Remember, this is day 1 of a 12-day challenge. Don't worry, there'll be plenty of time for perfectly coordinated supplies. Can you see how the paper doily adds a little bit of texture? I really love the feeling of that. I need to include more of those in my projects. I have actually forgotten just how nice they are. I didn't want to waste any of it, so I am going to add this small piece into the side here. Now you might be wondering what I'm going to do to the backs of each of the tags. These are all single-sided papers, so the backs of them are actually quite plain and white. It would be better to work with double-sided papers, but if you don't have those, here's what you need to do. Simply die cut out an extra tag and add it to the back. I've then added my stitching to secure everything together. I'll use that space to write who the parcel is to and from and my Christmas message.
These super cute gift tags sure do use up a lot of embellishments, but I haven't used up nearly enough ugly pattern paper just yet. Tomorrow I'm going to fix that by creating some Christmas cards with a very unique fold. They may look complicated, but I promise they're not. Anyone can make these and they're sure to impress. I'll leave a link for you right here. Be sure to watch that video next. I'll see you all again very soon. Until then, bye.